Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the Infillion Cafe. I'm Gina Shire, and I am the SVP of Client Partnerships at Infillion. I am so excited to welcome you all here for our panel called Dismantling the Loneliness Epidemic for Women at Work. We're really thankful to our partners at Little Words Project, TheList, and TheList's newest initiative called 10 Minutes to Togetherness for bringing this fantastic content to us today. This is actually a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. I was kind of raised as a woman in this industry. I've sat in many meetings where I look around and I'm the only woman in the room. And I've had to balance work and life and family, so I really kind of get this topic and understand where we're at today. In the spirit of inclusion, we hope you all can also stay here afterwards for our cocktail party that we're co-hosting with Rise. And with that, I will hand it over to Anne Shoket, who's going to introduce the panelists. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you. Oh, and my mic works. I love that too. That's amazing. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming. I know that this is a busy schedule, and it's beautifully sunny, and there's a gorgeous breeze. And so thank you for spending your time with us today. I'm Anne Shoket, CEO of TheList. Let me quickly introduce our panelists here and frame the conversation so everybody knows where we're going. And then we'll get into this is a very heavy topic, and frankly, really hard to talk about something so serious when it's so gorgeous and the rosé is being poured so generously. So we're going to move from the heaviness to the lightness, I promise. Let me introduce everybody really quickly. Adriana Carrig, CEO and founder of Little Words Project. These are all of my little words. Some of you should have a little words, and if you don't, come up to me after to get a togetherness bracelet. Rhonesha Byng, down at the end, founder and CEO of Her Agenda and co-founder of BOMESI, amazing. And Hillary Batzel, VP of Marketing for LinkedIn, brand new on the job, and important to talk about this. So let me frame the conversation. We did some research in partnership with BSG and Berlin Cameron about loneliness in the workplace. 80% of women are lonely because of their jobs. And it's not only at their jobs, the loneliness spills over into their personal lives. It is worse for women under 35. And the impact is felt even more acutely for women of color who feel like they can't show up to the office as their true selves. Everyone is feeling isolated and overwhelmed and unsupported. And I want to be really clear, this is not a men versus women problem. Men are deeply lonely too. This is they feel it differently. It is expressed differently. I'm looking at Natalie, who's my research partner here, and she's nodding, telling me I'm getting the research right. Mm-hmm. But what we also were able to identify in this research was the solution. So 80%, huge problem. Turns out 1 in 3 people in everybody's workplace is a cultivator. And the cultivators have this magic ability to bring people together and to deepen their relationships with their network so that on the other side, when they need those networks, they are there to support them and help them continue to rise in their career. The cultivators, listen, we are at a beautiful, amazing conference right now, but the cultivators don't need conferences, they don't need retreats, they don't need happy hours, they don't even really need to get off their couch. They just make human connections with the people who are already in their team. So one of the things that I want to keep in all of your mind is who is already rooting for you that you haven't been in touch with. Those are the people that you need to spend your 10 minutes to togetherness. Actually, one more thing, and then I'm going to move on. There's a lot. For the last 20 years, we've had a huge decline in the amount of time that we spend together. This is from the U.S. Surgeon General's report, who says that loneliness is an epidemic on par with the opioid crisis. If we all spent 10 minutes intentionally building our networks every day, we would decrease that loneliness gap by 50%. So these bracelets, my Little Words Project bracelet, is a reminder to spend those 10 minutes deepening our connections. All right, now, enough about the research and the stats. All right, here we go. What I want to do is I want to start here with Adriana and this is a question I want everybody to answer. When we started talking about this loneliness and togetherness, and frankly, we're here really to talk about how we help women rise in their careers. Will you talk about what your personal connection is to this work and what is your personal mission? What are you doing from your perspective to help solve the loneliness epidemic at work for women?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, and thank you for that wonderful spiel. I feel like I've heard it many times now, working with you, and every time it still hits just as much because it is so true. So as we mentioned, I am the CEO and founder of Little Words Project, which is a beaded friendship bracelet. Essentially, we've since expanded to include other types of jewelry, but all meant to connect people to one another. So the entire concept is to pick a word that means something to you. You wear it for as long as you need it, and then you're supposed to pass it on to someone else. And in doing so, you have a really genuine interpersonal connection with that person. So it really is just a vehicle of that, a vehicle for connection. So when Anne brought this research to me and let me know what she had been working on, it felt so perfect that we would align together in this mission of bringing people together IRL as often as possible, and giving that little vehicle of kindness and connection along with it. I had personally always been on the journey to find connection and community. The whole reason I started this brand was because I had never really had that. I grew up actually bullied from a very young age and always, like I said, sought that community. So fast forward to the college years, I created the brand for my college sorority. It really showed me that there's true impact in when women come together and support one another. And so when I graduated, decided to make it a full-fledged brand. And here we are 11 years later, 15 retail stores nationwide, sold in Targets nationwide. I mean, really built a reputable brand. Sitting in this panel in Cannes, I don't know what's happening, but it's an amazing thing, and I think it just goes to show that people are yearning for that connection, and we just make it our mission, both externally and internally on our team, to foster connection in the real world and in the workplace. And it's just been an honor, really, and a privilege to be able to do that with this product that literally started in my parents' basement. So started in the basement, now we're here.
Hillary, you're new in your role,
Yeah.
But not new to this idea of creating connection and the importance of creating connection. Will you share a little bit about how that has shown up around you?
Yeah. I'm going to start with a personal thought first. As someone who really dedicated herself to growing in her career, I never consciously thought about being lonely. Until about 2.5 years ago, I went on a date and someone asked me, what are your passions and what are you into? And the only thing I could talk about was work. And I thought, man, who am I? I've lost myself a bit. And I think that's something that many individuals, especially women too, we have this desire to succeed. And in that case, I had kind of lost who I was outside of that work definition or career definition. So I embarked on a little bit of my own personal journey, took a sabbatical, did anything but work for the first time in over 20 years, and found a way after that to kind of blend those worlds together and decide, what is it do I want to do? And I would say when you talk about cultivating networks, I feel like I'm a person who has a really strong network and have built those relationships. And you realize how much they come into play when you're doing a little bit of your own soul searching like that, where you reach out and you have a lot of gratitude and love for those that walk through their own experience and kind of help you make connections with other individuals that you might not know in your network. I ended up oddly at LinkedIn, which feels kind of like apropos with the connection of that story of connecting and cultivating and whatnot, which is very much a professional social network, but it's founded on the mission of driving economic opportunity for everyone in the global workforce. And we actually talk about it being a network of gratitude, and one in which we're meant to give back to others. It's not just about finding jobs, which I think everyone defers to. It's about actually having the right skills to get those jobs or grow yourself or grow others into what they want to do. It's about connecting and building your network and learning from others that you maybe don't even know, but who have a passion or a perspective that you don't have. And so I think it's an interesting journey for me, very much around togetherness
Yeah.
that kind of, and my own identification and personalization of where do I want to go, and how do I want to talk on my next date about what I do,
Yes.
and not just being about my career, leading me to LinkedIn, and really focusing my entire role on bringing people together.
I love what you said about first you had to create some togetherness with yourself, right? I think that that's a really important piece of when I talk about 10 minutes. Sometimes those 10 minutes are just for you, right? To deepen the connection with yourself, to understand what do you want, what do you need, and how are you going to get it. I love that part of your journey. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Rhonesha, I want to say that you and I have been in community with each other for almost, I think, like probably 10 years. And every single time I get the chance to be in your presence, I feel so much generosity from you. And I know that that's how you operate in your life. Will you share with everybody about your sort of journey of community and why it matters to you?
I love that, Anne, because I literally, since I came into this industry, and really I was lucky, and I consider myself lucky that I found my purpose and passion at a young age. I was 16 years old when I discovered journalism as not just the career I would take, but my mission in life. And that has since evolved into entrepreneurship. I launched Her Agenda while I was still in college. And it was 2008, so it's been 16 years. And another business called BOMESI was launched in 2020. But it's all rooted in community. Community to me is a tool for change, but also fuel for me. Because I remember a time when I started my company. Yes, I was a college student and I was mission driven, but I had a lot of moments where I was like, am I crazy? Is this actually going to make money? I went a year, maybe 2 years with no salary, no certainty of where my next paycheck was gonna come from. So that took a lot of faith. And at that time, actually, I was seeking my community. I didn't really have it yet. And so then when I did come across it, actually one of my early communities was TheList. I met the founder, Rachel Sklar, at an event that she spoke at, and she just kind of took me under her wing and said, you know, I know you don't have the means to pay for this membership, but we can do pro bono exchange. And that's how I worked my way into that community. And that's just one of many that I'm part of. But one thing I value is that space to know that I'm not crazy, and that people will answer the call when I'm trying to work out it's a lot of micro moments and little nuances in community that help you feel seen. So negotiating contracts or understanding if this salary makes sense for you or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Having somebody that you can bounce those ideas off of really makes a difference to help you keep going, because there's a lot of sort of is it worth it moments that happen, because we have to make a lot of sacrifices with our personal life, with, you know, milestone moments. You know, you might need to stay at home longer with your family, which I had to personally do, versus getting your own apartment, things like that. But it really helps you keep going, and it's your fuel. And I use it as a fuel and a tool. And with tool, it's like with Her Agenda, we're rooted in community, because with media, how it's going, with the algorithm and all of that, you really need to have that deep connection with your audience. And that's rooted in creating a community around it versus looking at it as just people that are looking at your website on Google Analytics or something like that.
I think that's such an amazing point that I know that you really embody, is if you want someone to show up for you, you have to show up for them. One of the sort of internal secrets at TheList in our community is sort of an unwritten rule of 2 gives for every ask, right? And very often, that when I do my 10 minutes of togetherness and I do my check-ins, my question is always, how can I help you? What do you need? Can I make a connection? Will you talk, before we move on to another question, will you talk a little bit about BOMESI and the underlying message of togetherness in that work?
Yeah, so when it comes to media platforms, if you run an independent media platform that's mission focused, often you're sort of on an island by yourself. And this happens a lot with entrepreneurship across the board. Even women-founded businesses over 85% are solo founders, don't have employees. And so when you think about media, in order for you to thrive and sustain and become profitable, you need to have a healthy ecosystem, access to relationships, resources, and often with independent Black-owned media, especially, we're just in survival mode. We're trying to create the content, publish the content, get it out there. Facebook doesn't surface our articles anymore, so now we have to find money to put spend behind those articles to bring traffic. And we're doing this all in a bubble. And so 2020 happened, and there was this awakening in corporate America that then trickled over to the advertising space as well. And I was in a group chat, literally, and this is why I love your research report, how it talks about the micro moments, because it doesn't have to be a big to-do. It doesn't have to be a board meeting. It doesn't have to be a conference. Literally, it started from a group chat, and all of my friends are like, are you seeing this? Like, this company made a statement. This company said they're going to spend X% of their dollars with us, but they've never spent with us before. And I wasn't brand new to the industry in 2020. At that point, I was in business for maybe like 14 years. So I'm like, if you didn't find me before, how do I expect you to see me now? So we came together first to create a database of independent Black-owned media companies to make sure that the excuse that you can't find us did not exist. We eliminated that. And in creating that database, we created community as well, because then I started to email everybody like, hey, let's get together in a WhatsApp group, talk about what deals you're doing, talk about what strategies you're finding effective, and being transparent about that. And what to me was mind-blowing is, yes, I had my peer group, and we were considered kind of like new media, emerging media, like 10, 15 years in the game. But the legacy media companies like Black Enterprise, All Hip Hop, Rolling Out, which had been around for 30 years, they started to come in and co-sign us. The CEO of Revolt TV actually spent time with us in a virtual town hall to talk about pricing and strategy and what our CPMs should be. And it blew my mind because he just talked about the value of, we have an audience that matters, and so the CPMs that are in the market don't match the value of your audience, and so you need to add tax to it. And so I increased my CPMs, and that led to increased profit that allowed me to hire more writers. And then I also coach and pass that on. It's a ripple effect. Yes. And so that's what BOMESI is and what we're doing, and it's more than just profit, but it's also about making a difference in our communities by hiring writers to tell the stories that matter.
All from a group chat, harnessing the power of a group chat. I actually think that's amazing, right? The spirit of generosity and connection and togetherness. Hillary, I think you said this, and if you didn't, you said it to me, which is that it's not remote work that's making people lonely, right? That we could do these remote, you can manage a remote team, you can have remote workers, and that's not what's creating the underlying message of loneliness, but it's really hard to keep the connections when you're remote. Will you talk a little bit about some of what you do to keep connections on your team?
Yeah. I'm a remote leader. Historically, when I was at Microsoft, I had a team that was around the world, all different time zones, and now still do at LinkedIn. I think a lot of times it comes back to being curious about people. It doesn't matter if there's a virtual screen. We're so used to that. And think about our children. They are only used to that in terms of engagement. But it does take effort, and it does take deliberation, maybe not the wrong word, being deliberate, about what you're going to do with those connections, and making the time. And if you're genuinely curious about people, it's not the filtering of what am I going to get out of this conversation. It's who is this person? What can I learn from them? And so changing the thought about why you say yes to a meeting or why you reach out to someone. You never know in those micro moments what opens up conversation, a different connection. And a lot of times you find So this person has a passion that you also know someone has a passion for, and you can make an introduction. You might connect on a different level with that individual. And so you have to just very much be open to conversation and having interest in people, but being deliberate about making time for it, and it actually be prioritized time. Because I think it's the first thing that goes, especially when you're remote.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I've been on the video remote call now for 7 hours, and now I've got to do this one-on-one with someone I don't know. Bring the energy to that one-on-one still, because you actually might be the best meeting you've had all day, and be open to that. But it definitely takes extra effort to kind of think through that and make those connections.
Who do you turn to for support and connection? Who's on your group chat or your?
Oh my gosh, one of them's walking in right now, actually. I would say I very much embraced, from a very early age in my career, the idea of board of directors. And you have a group of individuals who very much are going to bring different things to you as part of your board of directors. There are some days you need to go to somebody who's just going to pick you up. There are other days you want hard truths about a perspective that you maybe aren't giving yourself. And when you think about who is on that board of directors and why you have them there, it becomes really deliberate in who you have to network with and get perspective from. So I do that, and I would say, and everyone is very generous with their time when I call, and hopefully I reciprocate that too when others call me.
That's amazing. She's newly on my board of directors, so she's very generous with her time and energy. Adriana, I want to talk to you about your team, because I know that you have built your team with so much thoughtfulness and thinking about what do they need, as many are young in their careers, many are new moms, but the ways that you've sort of centered wellness and togetherness in your own work. And will you also talk about the secret of the all hands meeting?
Yes.
These are my two favorite. I'm queuing her up for my two favorite stories.
She knows all my answers. So we really are, we try to be as intentional as possible as leaders of a team of younger individuals, many of whom, predated the COVID work style. And so we're very used to being very hands-on, working in the office, and then obviously the pandemic happened and the shift started becoming a little bit more, remote, and that became the norm amongst all their friends and other companies. We did come back to office, and we're all based in a headquarters in New Jersey, beautiful Route 22, nothing like this, but we try to make the experience of the in-office experience as robust as possible, whether it be through really collaborative all-hands meetings where everyone gets to go around the room and share what their wins are that they're working on in their individual channels, or through our workshops that we offer of like vision boarding or any of the other things that kind of remind you why it's fun to do things together.
I want a vision board in your office.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it's a fun thing.
I've not heard about vision
you haven't
boarding
heard
before,
vision
but that sounds pretty. That sounds pretty great.
Vision boarding. I mean, we try at the end of the other element of the wellness that Anne was nodding to is we do offer free therapy to our team every other week. Everyone gets a free therapy session with our in-house therapist, which we have taken. We've made that investment in this initiative so that our team does feel supported in the very also difficult world of the startup, right? Which is very much so the kind of culture that we have. Everything is, go, 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 and fast, 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 and having bootstrapped it for the first 10 years, it's like the only thing you can do is continue to reinvest in your team and the movement towards whatever end goal that we have. So anyway, that situation of the wellness being front and center, that even though there's the expectation of hard work and long hours, there's also offsetting that with the importance of wellness and giving the team the feeling that they are heard and listened to, and really just listening, I think, is half the battle when it comes to providing wellness and that safe space in the workplace. But it's hard, honestly. It's one of the hardest parts of being a leader is hiring a team and managing that team and growing that team and nurturing that team, but we try to be as intentional about it as possible because this brand being all about connection and community, it wouldn't be authentic if that didn't start within, and that's what we really try to prioritize. And with a team that went from me, my mom, and my dad in my house to now 100 people, both at our retail stores and in our headquartered office, it's just really something we try to strive for and perfect every day.
Could I add to that? Just
Of
a thought?
course, yes.
I think on the idea of wellness too, and as leaders trying to really show others how to do it, we have to do it too.
Yes.
And that is something like it's hard to really take the time for your own self to say, what does wellness mean for me? And how do I model that for the teams that we're championing and running? And that is a really important aspect of taking time and being deliberate about your prioritization.
So how do you do that with your team? Like, what are some of the things that people would say, oh, that Hillary's doing that, so I'm going to do that too?
Well, there's simple things of taking action in your own choices. We work whenever we want to work, right? And so I empower my team, you are all adults, to make the choices of how you're choosing your time. If you don't want to answer an email because you are with your kids late at night, great, don't do that. Do that when that time is relevant and right for you to be in the mind space to have the right response. I also I kind of took mental health days for myself before it became a common vernacular in our our company culture. And part of that was because I know when I get drained. And if I am responsible for creating energy, which I believe is very much part of our leadership responsibilities, I can't do that if I myself don't have energy to do so. And so I deliberately put them on the calendar months out, knowing you got a rough month. You're going to need a little break after that just for yourself to kind of recharge and come back strong.
Smart.
I think that's so important. You can't be your best self when you're feeling frantic or under pressure or micromanaged or watched, right? You need to have that space and time. And I think that particularly the time, right? That's how you build togetherness, and time and trust and transparency. Those are sort of in addition to all my other words, but those are the words that are my guiding principles when I think about togetherness. So that's really amazing. I wanted to come back to you, Adriana, with your all hands meeting, because you said it offhandedly, but this is one of the you are one of the few people I know who embraces the all hands meeting. Everybody else I know loves to roll their eyes at an all hands meeting. However, it turns out the all hands meeting is actually a secret to making your employees feel seen and heard and connected and transparent. And as Natalie reminds me all the time, this is not a problem that you can hack your way out of, that we can give everybody 10-minute reminders, and that you can connect with your board of directors and how to build your own network. But you need to work for a company that prioritizes transparency and collaboration and gives you visibility. And so no more eye rolling at the all hands meeting. Turns out the all hands meeting is quite a success. Rhonesha, will you share a little bit more about your own personal way you build community with your team? What are some of the tricks that you do, how you show up?
I mean, you touched on a lot of it. I like to hire smart people and get out of their way. I really don't micromanage. And what I didn't want to do with my company, I started out in corporate media when I was 17 years old. And I could see a lot of the inefficiencies that existed because of the bureaucracy, the meetings for no reason, the decision maker hierarchy, and how, often the person who said yes or no had no idea actually what the impact of the story would be. And I didn't want to recreate that environment. So I actually don't overschedule meetings with my team. I give them space to actually sort of operate and think about things and do things, and it just be there as their source to vent or get feedback, or if they need me to double tap on something, because sometimes their emails are getting ignored, and I kind of have a way about popping in people's inboxes and then they respond. So I'm just there as a resource and a champion versus a boss. And that's what the environment I cultivated in response to, what I was seeing in corporate media that I did not want to replicate.
You've had that experience of being both in corporate, right? 80% of women in corporate jobs are lonely because of their jobs. And also we know that being an entrepreneur is deeply lonely. Is there a piece from your corporate experience that you've taken with you or purposefully like programmed against the other way?
I will say, just thinking about that time, I talked earlier about when I first started my business that I wouldn't say I felt lonely, but I knew I had to seek a new community to support where I was. And so that's something that I do want to highlight too with, whether you're in a new leadership role at work or, often your report actually points out when you're a Black woman in a position of power, there's often lack of respect, and that impacts how you feel when you show up at work. And I've seen all of that, and that's what we speak to a lot with her agenda in terms of how to navigate it. And so I will say, if you've been part of different communities all your life and you're in a space, you're at a new level, that it's okay to think about how am I going to find my new community? And if you're feeling that, you have to be very intentional about finding it or creating it. There's a Toni Morrison quote about, if there's a book that is needed that you haven't read yet, then you're the one to write it. And it's similar to even community spaces, and especially if you are from a marginalized community where you're the only one often in certain spaces. In your 9 to 5, you might not have that community, but you need to have it in your text messages. You need to have it at your monthly dinners or just even in the podcast that you listen to. And those are real people behind it. So you can kind of even find community spaces within what they're creating as well. So just being intentional about understanding, where you are currently, what your needs are socially, and either finding it or creating it is just important at every stage.
If I can jump in, one of the things, and I think everything you just said is so important, but also, I think there's also, I should say not but, and also, I think it's the stories we tell, right? And how vulnerable we're willing to be in certain scenarios that always lead to the broadest and the deepest connections, right? And so one of the things that we try to do with our bracelets is, we like to say, create your story, share your story, stack your story, right? Because each of these words, each of these bracelets remind you of a certain situation in your life or essentially helped you through some difficulty that you're now wearing it right on your wrist. And what a great conversation starter. And now here you are talking to the person in line at Starbucks about your reason for, or your infertility journey or whatever it might be. And next thing you know, she's gone through that same thing. Or forget Starbucks.
It just happened to me when I was in line. I gave a togetherness bracelet to a young woman who had a stack, and she took one of hers off and gave me strength. It was
Which
amazing.
is exactly what we're trying to have happen across this entire business. So it's so cool.
It was really beautiful.
It's amazing to see that's happening, like in Cannes, like again, pinch me. But even if we don't look at it from the public perspective, but in the office, like if you're literally at the water cooler or the snack room or whatever it might be, the pumping station, and you are talking to another coworker about your words or your story, now you've built more connection and more community within the workspace as well. So whether it be our product, which shameless plug, it could be, because we do custom offer every single option in the world that you could possibly want, or any other way to wear your story on your sleeve, right? Or just be willing to share and open up. It really breeds and fosters connectivity and makes people feel seen. And I think that's half the battle.
I want to quickly add to that because you made me think about something that really has been a guiding force in my life. I think really most people want to help you. You just have to show and tell them how. And that often is manifested through the stories that you tell about yourself to others, and just being intentional about, who's in front of you. Everyone's busy. Just thinking about how are you going to explain your story in a way that they can understand so that they can actually help you and you can help them as well.
Yeah, and see themselves in your story as well.
Hillary, will you talk a little bit about LinkedIn? I keep thinking, really resonated with me, and I'd not heard before that LinkedIn is a network of gratitude. And yet that feels right to me, right? And very often I'm doing my 10 minutes on LinkedIn messages, right, that I'm pinging somebody and thanking them for a panel, for a conversation, for an introduction. But will you talk a little bit more about how that gratitude reverberates at LinkedIn and helps build a sense of connection?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple angles we could take that question with. I'll start first on just the company and employees. I know there's a lot of conversation about corporate culture. I'd say LinkedIn very much operates differently than some of the typical thoughts around what corporate culture can be. When you come into the company, you spend at least an hour on your onboarding session talking about wellness and what does wellness mean to you and all of the opportunities that what LinkedIn offers. LinkedIn actually has what we call in days once a month, where there are no meeting days of which you're meant to actually engage with others. Those others sometimes are your employees, based depending on the topic. This past Friday was family in day, so you were encouraged to spend a certain amount of time with family, whether that be your given family or your chosen family, and that is togetherness. So whatever the topic is, it is really meant about bringing people together to experience things. So I think that it's a platform that, yes, is about gratitude, but also very much extends into the culture of which has been built, the company has been built on.
I love that so much. I want to come for an in day. Can I come in and like even just because?
You can actually.
Yeah.
They are open to community.
Great.
So.
I want to come in for an in
I'll
day. I'm seeing by my countdown clock that we have a couple of minutes for Q&A. If there's anyone in the audience that is sitting there with a question about how we create community, why we create. Oh, yes, we have back here. Yes, yes.
Hi, yes. I'd like to ask Rhonesha, how did she sort of start at such a young age with her company? Like, what were some of the skill sets and things that it took to kind of like be able to be so bold and confident in order to start your business at such early on?
Did everybody hear the question? Yeah, great.
Great, vocalizing. you did it from the diaphragm. That was good. So I started Her Agenda when I was 19 years old, but I had already at 16 discovered my purpose and passion for journalism. And through that, I was able to cover red carpets. I covered Gordon Parks' funeral. I was able to sort of see behind the curtain of what it means to tell stories and what it means to put stories out there in the ecosystem. And in doing that, I recognized the power that media has. Media has the power to really shape the mind. And so fast forward, I'm 19 years old in a women's studies class. And I thought I was going to learn about how women are dominating the world, killing it in every industry, bossing up across the board. And I learned that, and this is 2008, mind you, that women still were held back by the patriarchy, that the gender pay gap still existed. And I was actually shocked, and I was just motivated to, utilize the power of media to create change and to change the ratio of women in positions of power. And to do that, the skills that were needed were actually skills I had already cultivated within journalism. And going back to discovering that as my purpose and passion, I was always called nosy as a kid, which is really curiosity that's needed for journalism. I always loved to read. I would read a book a day from when I was in first grade, and that's also necessary for journalism. And so I say all that to say sometimes what our purpose is, what our passion is, we don't recognize it and see it right away because it's something that comes to us organically or naturally. And it's not until others see it and point it out that we're able to say, actually, this is a skill. It's not just something that I just happen to be good at. And so for me, what helped a lot were teachers. My teacher forced me into journalism and to be part of the school newspaper. I didn't want to stay after school. I was like, what? Am I going to get paid to stay here extra hours? And so once it clicked and journalism made sense, and then discovering that gap in the market with needing a platform that elevated powerful women, it just all came together, and I just kept going, really, to bring it back full circle because of the communities that I found myself in. From TheList, I'm also part of Forbes 30 Under 30. I'm part of the Emma Bowen Foundation, which is how I started interning at 17. Just all these networks that help me to sustain and understand I'm not crazy to want to change the world, that it's possible through little micro habits and micro moments.
I love that. You reminded me that you had talked about like having a buddy, right? A buddy system. And I think that that's really the takeaway of 10 Minutes to Togetherness is you don't need it doesn't have to be a huge community, right? There's a group text worth of people who are in your corner, and those are the people that you have to deepen the relationships with. I think that I love that buddy system idea that you and I have talked about.
And it creates accountability as well. When you express your idea out loud, and then you see that friend, and they're like, what's going on with that thing?
Yeah.
You feel like a fraud if you're just like, oh, well, I'm not doing it anymore. Oh, I didn't have time. You want to actually see it through because you know your community is going to be like, well, what's up with that thing?
I actually still have accountability meetings with folks in my network for that purpose, to keep myself and others accountable. So true.
Other questions? All right, well, I have one more question then. If you're imagining 5 years in the future, what do you want to see for loneliness and togetherness? What would you like to see in the workplace for women?
Well, in the workplace, well, my me answer is I want to see more interactions like what you went through today that was super organic and have to do with my product, of course. But in the workplace, in my workplace, I want to hopefully see a place that is, talked about broadly on platforms like LinkedIn for how connected each person feels to them, to their team and to what they're working on, and just being a true safe place. The way I look at this bracelet is it's an indicator of safety. If this is a safe place, if you see someone wearing a bracelet, it's a place for connection and kindness, and self-love and self-expression, and building and creating your story. And it's just a really special piece of jewelry that I hope to continue to see permeate the world, frankly, which I feel like I can say now confidently, being in France talking about it. I know I can't get over this. I'm a Jersey girl who started this in a basement, you guys. It's like I'm very much so like having imposter syndrome, but that's what I want, and I it's working, and I think that's a really special thing. So in my workplace, I'm hoping to see more of that, and then I think just generally in the workplace, I'd love to feel like panels like these aren't as necessary, as much as they are right now. I still want to do them because I think, again, that community is bred in moments like these. But I also just hope to see a world that is, feels more connected, and less lonely, which I mean is kind of basic to say, but I think that's what we're all hoping for. That's why we're all sitting here today.
Amen. Hillary, you're just at the beginning of like a new opportunity, a new role, but if you look 5 years out, what does it look like?
Yeah, I'd like to see more company culture start to actually reward individuals for togetherness, collaboration, and the how you do work, rather than just the impact of that work. A lot of the conversations in how people are monetized, especially in bigger companies, is what did you do, not the how did you actually get to that outcome. And I think the how you get to that outcome is super important for togetherness, for building a culture that values and respects each other. And so I'd really like to see that kind of be ingrained in more and more company culture across, many different industries.
And you're leading the way, starting with your own team.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Rhonesha.
I think more space for intergenerational connectivity.
Oh, that's good.
That's something that we need to be better at. Post-pandemic especially, I don't have many deep connections with Gen Z. And because I am an entrepreneur and I'm in my own kind of business bubbles and things like that, I don't have that intentional moment. So maybe that's something her agenda will create, or something that one of you can create. But just having more, maybe like mentor-mentee nights out to plays, monthly dinners, just organic space where it's not super structured. I think it's just really important to have spaces for intergenerational connection and passing of insight and wisdom and learnings.
I 100% love that, particularly as I talk to different generations. I tell everyone that person who's a different generation is a window into experiences you have not had before, not a barrier, as we often ugh and roll our eyes about such things. I love that. I'm going to leave you with my wish for the next 5 years. In 5 years, I would like everyone to have their 10 minutes a day be part of their regular routine. That you think about the gratitude, the moment you need to spend with yourself, the people you need to reach out to, and that it becomes like taking vitamins in the morning. It becomes like your morning coffee, that you spend these 10 minutes and we reduce this loneliness gap. And listen, you don't have to be lonely. You don't have to admit you are lonely in order to benefit from the power of togetherness. So thank you all for this. I appreciate you.
And if you don't have a togetherness bracelet yet, come find
Come
us.
and find us.
We
Yes.
will hand you one.
Amen to that.